So welcome to our today's class, and today we beginning our blocks revision, and I will do past papers. And the first one that we're going to begin is from the sitting of November 2019. That is now what we'll be able to discuss for our today. November 2019. For November 2019. I want we move together to that sitting of November 2019. November 2019. November 2019. Then let's begin with question number one. Question one. November 2019, question number one. November 2019, question one. You are required to examine 4 limitations of planned economic systems. The limitations of planned economic systems. Now, generally, before we get to know what we mean in this case, this is bringing us out to what we call the economic systems. And in economic systems, this is where we normally talk about the solution to what we call the scarcity, or whereby in this case, we talk of the solution or the answers to what we call the basic economic questions. Now, the basic economic question, you know, we have what to do, what to produce, how to produce, and whom to produce. Now, in order to understand or the answers to those questions, that is why we now use what we call the economic systems. And the economic systems, in this case, we normally categorize them into 3. We have what we call the free market economy. We have also the planned economy, and we also have what? The mixed economy. Now, when we talk about the free market economy, this is whereby the decision on resource allocation will be determined by the market process of demand and what? Supply. That is what we call through price mechanism. Price mechanism is whereby the prices will be determined through the market forces of demand and what? Supply. And in that case, you need to know the advantages and disadvantages, the same as the features of free market economy. So do you know the features of free market economy? Yes, the features of free market economy. 1, there is free entry and exit by firms. The second one, yes. Yes. That the prices will be determined by what? Process of demand and supply. Did we talk about the same? The advantages or the characteristics of free market economy. So talked about the ownership of private property. Also talked about the freedom of choice and what we call enterprise. We also talked about the self-interest, whereby you can pursue your own personal goals, competition, and we also talk of reliance to what we call the what? Enterprise mechanism. Yes, whereby now you are talking about the price mechanism. Sawa. Then we also talked about the advantages and disadvantages of the same. So you will take from the same. Now, the second category is what we call the planned economy. Now, what is a planned economy? Planned economy, we say, is whereby the decision on resource allocation will be determined by what? An economic body that is appointed by the state, meaning that in this case now, one of the limitation or what you may talk about here, there is what we call the government intervention. And if there is government intervention, then what we mean in this case, there will be what we call the what? Will be no wastage of resources, will be wastage of resources. Let's just talk about the same, the limitations of the same. We have wastage of resources, will be wastage of resources in planning. Now, what do we mean in this case? If the government in this case is involved, there must be what we call formulation of budgets. And in formulating these budgets, we are using what? Resources. Are we together? So there will be wastage of resources in planning. The second limitation will also, there will be high cost of gathering what? High cost of gathering information, high cost of gathering information, and this is for planning purposes. And that is on gathering on when you are formulating the budget. And then number 3, may also talk of there is no what we call the what? Consumers' sovereignty. There is no consumer sovereignty. And number 4, may also talk of there is lack of what? Lack of flexibility in the economy. We mean in this case, since the prices will be fixed by the state, there is no flexibility in that case. If they set some prices, they are going to be rigid. So number 5, there will be no incentives, and that is for hard work and what? Hard work and innovation. In hard work and innovation. Those are the limitations or the disadvantages of the planned economy. So you also make sure that you learn on the advantages and also the disadvantages of what? The disadvantages of planned economy. I mean the features, not the disadvantages is what we've been able to talk about in that case. Now, so then the third category of the economic systems is what we call the mixed economies. So this one will now be the combination of free market economy and what we call the what? Planned economy. Whereby in this case, the decision on resource allocation will be determined by the state and also the what? Through what we call the price what? Mechanisms. Monetary advantages and disadvantages, you can get them on what we call both the free market economy and what? The planned economy. That is on that case or on that question of number 1A. We go to 1B. 1B. Using a well-labeled diagram, explain the concept of production possibility what? Curve. Concept of production possibility curve. Production possibility curve. Now we also call it the frontier of production possibility curves. Now this one normally explains the relationship, or it's just a locus of all the combined points representing goods and services that a country can produce when all resources are fully and efficiently utilized. So, like for example, in this case, we assume like in Kenya, we can produce only two types of goods. Can produce the agricultural goods and also the what? Manufactured goods. So I have the manufactured goods and we have the agricultural goods. Manufactured good and we have the agricultural goods. So this is a concave and then I will have that. So in this case, I can have this one is point A, can have point B and point C, and then I can have point D, can have point D. This is what we mean. This country can produce a maximum output of point B and what? C. And this is when all the resources are fully utilized. So, when you utilize all the resources, the maximum output will be what? C. So in this case, what we mean, point A, B and C represents the maximum output that the country can produce, and this is when all resources are what? When all resources are fully utilized and all resources are fully utilized. That is what we mean. Point A. So. Then the country can produce combination of this A now. A, but this means that some resources will not be what? Fully utilized. So, but some resources will not be utilized. Some resources will not be utilized. Are we together? And then we have also at D. At point D is not attainable. Since the company requires more resources, the country will require more resources for it to be attained, That is what we mean in that case. So at this point, this one will not be attainable. It will only be attainable if other resources in this case will be what? If other resources in this case will be introduced. And these other resources will be either through advancement of a new technology, and also you may talk of either through introducing new resources or discovering new resources. And that is what in that case you are required to do. That is on that part of the consumer or production possibility what? Production possibility for dia. Now we continue the other one. Now we also required, that is on C, question 1C. With the help of a diagram, you illustrate the concept of surplus as applied in the theory of the market behavior. Concept of surplus is applied in the theory of market what? Equilibrium. Theory of the concept. That is number C. Concept of surplus. And this is as applied in what? As applied in market equilibrium. Now, to explain this, you can either use what we call the stable what? Stable equilibrium. And how do you draw the stable equilibrium? Now, what is a stable equilibrium? Yes? The forces of demand and supply will push the prices towards the what? The equilibrium point. I'm just Omar. Okay. And therefore, in this case, we'll have to use this. I'm using that concept of the stable equilibrium. Stable equilibrium. And on the stable equilibrium, this is the equilibrium point. And in this case, this is the equilibrium quantity. And that is the equilibrium what? The equilibrium price. So in this case, when you check here, this is whereby the supply is going to be more. Therefore, this will be excess supply, the one that we are talking about, which we know excess supply will lead to what we call in the what? Surplus. And in this case, here there is what we call in the excess what? Excess what? Demand. When you check on this case, more is more quantity demanded. So same case here, more quantity supply. So in that case, having now noted that, we may write and say, so in this case, we say this is what we call what? The stable equilibrium, where in this case they will be pushing the prices towards the equilibrium price. And that is now what we call the stable equilibrium, where in this case the economic forces are pushing the prices towards the equilibrium point. Now, write and say at point P1, there is going to be excess supply. At point P1, there is going to be excess supply or surplus. Excess supply or surplus. Say, the producers will have to react on this. Producers will have to react on this. Producers will have to react on this by lowering the prices. By lowering the prices. Say, so as to sell off all the unsold stocks. So as to sell off all the unsold stock. So as to sell off all the unsold what? Unsold stock. So that is what you need to talk about on that part of the concept of surplus, and that is on what we call the what? The consumer equilibrium. Now, question number 1D. Question 1D. This was C. So let's get to D. The following equations are given. We have Q is equal to negative 10 plus 6. Then Q is equal to 20 minus 6 what? P. So out of those two equations, you are required, given reasons, you identify the demand function and then the supply what? Function. So in our case, Q is equal to minus 10 plus 6P. Is this a demand function or supply function? And then we have the second one, which is Q is equal to 20 minus 4P. Now, which is our demand function, which is our supply function? Out of the two, which is our demand function, which is our supply function? The first one, is it supply or demand? Yes? Supply. Reason? This will be supply function. Supply function. A reason in this case is a what? An upward what? Is upward slope. And that is why it's having a positive. So then we have negative slope, which is now the demand function. And in this case, this is a what? Negative slope. The negative slope. So now Roman number 2, determine the equilibrium price and the equilibrium what? Quantity. Now we know at equilibrium, demand is equal to what? Supply. So quantity demanded is equal to quantity supply. We have the quantity, which is negative 10 plus 6P is equal to 20 minus 4P. This will be 6P minus 4P, plus 4P is equal to 20 plus 10. 10P will be equal to 30. So our P is equal to how much? P is equal to 3. So, and therefore now we can equate with one of that to know what is our quantity. So if we know P, quantity is either 10 plus 6P. So it will be negative 10 plus 6 to multiply by 3, which in that case it will be 8. So that is the equilibrium quantity. And this is the equilibrium what? The equilibrium price. The equilibrium price. Now we continue. Question number what? Question number 2. Let's get to that question. Question number 2. Question number 2. Question number 2. Evaluate 3 fundamental economic issues that our society has to address in order to minimize the problem of scarcity of resources. What are the fundamental economic issues that our society has to address in order to minimize the problem of scarcity of resources? Yes, Faith. What are the fundamental issues? Yeah? Yes? Yeah? Yes. In this case, it's on the basic economic question. Even in this case, they are able to know what to produce. They are able to know how to produce it and whom to produce. They will be able to do what? To solve or to address or to minimize the problem of scarcity. So that is question 2A. 2 will be what to produce, how to produce, and whom to produce. What we mean in this case, when we talk of want to produce, this is the products, the products and services. When we talk of how to produce, it is the methodologies that you are going to use in order to establish the product. And in this case, is to whom will consume the product. Generally on the distribution channels, or now in this case, it will reach to the users of that commodity. And that is on that case. Now we go to question 2B. You are required to talk about the factors that has led to. Factors that has led to. Led to the external economies of scale. External economies of scale. Now, this one brings us to what we call the economies of scale. And what is economies of scale? Nathan. Yes? This is the reduction of the unit cost while expanding the what? You are reducing the unit cost while expanding the output. That is what we call the economies of scale. Now, in economies of scale, we say there are two types of economies of scale. We have external economies of scale, and we also have internal economies of scale. Internal economies of scale, we talked about the factors that may lead to the same, where we talked about the what? Marketing what? Economies. We talked about the technological economies. We also talk about the organizational economies. We also talked about what? Diversification, financial economies, risk bearing, all of those. They are the one that will affect what we call the internal economies of scale. But in our case here, they want us to talk about what will give rise to what we call the what? External economies of scale. And the factors that will lead to the external economies of scale, one is the localization of industries. Localization of industries. Localization of industries. The other one is also economies of information. Economies of information. Economies of information. The other one, we also talk of interdependence of suppliers. Interdependence, the interdependence of suppliers and customers. 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 The other one, we also talk of technological external economies, such as development of skilled labor, technological external economies, such as the development of what? Skilled labor. May also talk over the other one. May also talk over cheaper materials and capital equipment. Cheaper materials and capital equipment. Cheaper materials and capital equipment. The other one, improved transportation and marketing facilities. Improved transportation and marketing facilities. Marketing facilities, etc. So those are the factors that may lead to what we call the external economies of what? Scale. We continue. Question number 2C. You are required to describe the assumptions of the law of variable proportions. The law of variable proportion. The law of variable proportion. Now, do you know what the law of variable proportion says? Yes? You know the law of variable proportion. You know what the law of variable proportion says? Yes. The law of variable proportions. You know what it states? Yes. Law of variable proportion. You know what it states? Yes. The law of variable proportions. The law of variable proportion. Who knows it, what it states? How does the law of variable proportion state? Yes, the law of variable proportion. Now, the law of variable proportion is also what we call the law of what? Diminishing what? Diminishing returns, exactly. So what does the law of diminishing returns state? Yes. What does the law of diminishing returns state? Law of variable proportion is also the law of diminishing returns. And I'm asking, what does the law of diminishing returns state? What does the law of diminishing returns state? Yes. The law of diminishing returns or variable proportions. What does it state? Can write and say this says that law of variable proportion, right hand say it states that as additional units, the law of variable proportion states that as additional units of a variable factor are added is additional units of a variable factor, is additional units of a variable factor are added to a given quantity of fixed factors, with a given state of technology, comma, the average product and marginal product, and marginal product of the variable factor, average product and marginal product of the variable factor will eventually decline. Now let's talk about the assumptions. Now the assumption number one, it assumes that the rate of change, is constant. It assumes that the rate of change is constant. Number two, it assumes that no changes in technology. There is no changes in technology. Assumes that there is no changes in technology. The one, it assumes that labor is variable. It assumes that labor is variable and homogeneous. Labor is variable and homogeneous. It assumes that the quantity of capital equipment, is given. Quantity of capital equipment is given. Quantity of capital equipment is given. We continue. Assumptions, that is question number 2C. Assumptions of the assumptions of computer, the assumptions of what? Consumer rationality. Question 3A. Assumptions of consumer rationality. Assumptions of consumer rationality. Oh, what do we mean when we talk of consumer rationality? In this case, the consumer is said to be rational in the sense that he is aiming at maximizing his utility, given his what? Income and what? Market prices. So the assumptions of consumer rationality, number one, they are complete. That is, number one, right? They are complete. That is, they are complete. That is, given any set of forcible bundle of goods the consumer is always capable of deciding which one is deciding which one is what, which one is preferable. That is number one. Number two, they are reflexive. Consumers are what we call what? Reflective. This means that any bundle is at least as good as itself. It is as good as itself. Number three, they are transitive. They are transitive. What we mean in this case is out of what we call the transitivity. So, transitivity and consistency. So, when we talk about transitivity, we say that if bundle A or combination A is preferred over bundle B, then bundle B preferred over C, over bundle C. Then it means bundle A will be preferred over what? Bundle A will be, or combination of A will be preferred over what? Over C. A will be preferred over C. There is also another one. Then number four, they are continuous. They are continuous. What we mean? There are no big jumps on ranking alternatives, nagging alternatives. And that is what in that case you are required to talk about. So a minute, we continue. So we continue. Now, question number what? 3B. Question number 3B. With an aid of a well-labeled diagram, you explain the concept of backward bedding of supply of labor. That is B. Backward bedding of the supply of labor. Now this is under what we call the what? The exemption of the law of what? The exemption of the law of supply. The exemption of the law of supply. And on the exemption of the law of supply, one of it we said is the supply of labor. And in this case, we say the supply of labor will not increase with the increase in what? But what does the law of supply say? What does it say? The law of supply? Yes? I'm talking about the law of supply. What does it say? What does the law of supply say? Yes, what does the law of supply say? Law of supply. What? An increase in price of a commodity will lead to what? Increase in quantity what? Supply. Increase the prices of the commodity, the producers will supply more. Are we together? Now, in this case now, this one is against that law. And that is now where we have in the backward bedding of supply of labor. So I have the units of labor. Then I have the labor what? Labor supply. Labor supply. Right? Same. Now, in this case, say workers prefer more leisure, prefer more leisure on higher levels of income, higher levels of what? Levels of income. On higher levels of income. This is because they take advantage of when wage increase. They take advantage of leisure as compared to what? The wage increases. Wage increase. That situation is what will give rise to what we call the what? Backward bedding. They will prefer more leisure on higher levels of income. This is because instead of them taking advantage of leisure, they want to do what? They want to they want to take advantage of what? They want to take advantage of leisure instead of what? That wage increase. And that is what we mean when we talk of the backward bedding of supply of labor. We continue. Question number 3. Question number 3. Question number 3. Question number 3. Question number 3C. Question 3C. Question 3C. A firm operating under perfect competition observe that 1, at a unit of price 20 of product PR, 6 units were sold. At a price of 70, the sales of the product are decreased by 500 units. The relationship between the price of product R and the quantity sold of product R is linear. The total cost C of products R is given by the function being given there, where the quantity is, the Q is the quantity of product R produced and sold. Required, the revenue function, profit and at equilibrium, and then we have the equilibrium price. Equilibrium price. Now, this is under perfect market competition, and we know when we talk of price, and this is on, in this case, remember you are the increase in price, the sales of that will decrease by what? 50. So it is introducing us to what we call the what? Demand. Sawa sawa. Kama for example, ukiangalia at 20, they will buy 600 units. Ikiongezeka to 70, less will be what? Bought. So that one is what? Is it demand or supply? Where an increase in price of a commodity, that is the law of demand. An increase in price of a commodity will lead to what? Decrease in what? So now I'm a demand less. Are we together? You may increase. So in that case, demand, we say that price is normally given by A minus what? BQ. Sindio? Gold, it is a negative slope. Are we together? So in that case, the price here is, when the price is 20, what will be the quantity demanded? The quantity demanded, we were told, is 600 units, which is 600B. The quantity which is Q will be 600. That one you call it equation 1. Are we together? Right? Then, if the price in this case is increased to 70, now this demand will reduce by how much? Will reduce by 500. So meaning that what will be demand is how much? 100 units. So in that case, that one you call it equation 2. And you may solve the equation to get the value of A and B. Are we together? So in that case, it will be, this is minus 50 is equals to minus 500B. Right? So in this case, is it minus or positive? Minus 600 minus 100. It will be, will it be minus or plus? Yes? Minus 600 minus 600. It will be how much? 100. It will be negative 500. So what will be our B? Sasa mnaniangalia, niko na calc. Are you sure it's 10? You people. 0.1. Sawa sawa. Are we together? Then you equate from here. We know either of this equation is equals to A minus 600 B. And the B in this case is 0.1. So A in this case will be negative. This is 60, A will be Z negative 40. So our P, which is price, will be given by A, which is negative 40, plus B, which is how much? B, which is 0.1 Q. And that is the price. Sawa. But in our case, we want to know Roman 1, which is revenue what? Revenue function. Now, how do you get the total revenue? It is price you multiply by quantity. We know the price, so we multiply by quantity. This one will be negative 40 plus 0.1 Q. We multiply by Q. Therefore, our total revenue function is minus 40 Q. You add 0.1 Q squared. That is our total revenue function. The total revenue function. Then, the other one, Roman 2 is the profit and at equilibrium. Profit and at equilibrium. The profit and at equilibrium. So how do we get the profits? Total revenue minus total cost. Are we together? So do we know the total revenue? Total revenue, we know it is negative negative 40 Q plus 0.1 Q squared minus, we know the total cost. Yes, 0.9 Q squared, you minus, you add that Q, you also add what? 1,000. So in this case, it will be of how much? It will be negative, I begin with Q. 0, this one will be negative 0.8 Q squared plus what will be our minus 40 plus this, plus minus plus that, it will be minus 7Q. And then this is minus 1,000, right? Is that correct? That is minus plus that, it will be minus, right? So in that case, we get how much? Was this one correct? Yes? Was it 80? This is 70, 100 you multiply by 0.1, 10. Is that supposed to be 80? Mbona Mungu niambie? 80. Why is it that this one is different then? Or even I use this one will be, oh yeah, plus, it is 80. And you didn't tell me. So you knew all that time and you couldn't tell, eh? Right? Okay. All right. All right. This is 8. So it is a positive. 8q minus that. This will be positive. It will be positive what? 40, 50 q minus 1000. That is now the profit function. That is the profit function. So with that, we are required to talk about the plan profit that will be earned at what? Equilibrium. So how do we get the profit that will be earned at the equilibrium? Having that value. We have the profit function and we want to know the profit that will be earned at the equilibrium. You come here, you differentiate the what? Profit function. Profit function. So in this case, it will be 0 is equals to 2.2 you multiply by 0.8 minus 1.6 cube plus 50. Hapo mbeleo nimefanya nini? Yes? Do you know how to differentiate? Yes, you differentiate the function. And therefore 1.6 q is equals to 50. So q will be how much? 20? Yes? That 25. That is that 1.25. And also that now we replace it from there. So our equilibrium profit will be negative 0.8 you multiply by that 1.25 squared. You add 50 multiply by that 1.25. Then minus 1000. So how much will it give you? How much will it give you? You're getting how much? Ama you are just copying? Huh? Ama nijiambie answer. Yes, negative? Is it negative? Negative. 2, 18. Negative? Yes. So you can have that. That is how in this case you are required to do that. You copy that very fast. So you are done? Now, question number 3, 4. Oh, Roman 3. We had not completed the question. Now, what is the equilibrium price? Yes. We know P is equals to what? Price tulisema hapa ni 8 plus 0.1 Q. So 8 0.1 Q ilikuwa ngapi? That 1.25. Giving you how much? Now we continue then. Question number 4A, very fast. The per capita income of a hypothetical country increased by 20% from the year 2015 to year 2018. Now, when we talk of per capita income, the amount of money that is received by a country or in a given region. So, are we together? Amount of money that is received by a given country or a region. So you are required, or despite this increase in per capita income, the residents of the country felt their living standards was deteriorating. Required. Discuss the reason that might have led to this feeling by the residents. So what we mean in this case, the per capita income of a country in increase. And you as the resident, even if the amount that we are receiving in that country is increasing, your living standards bado zinafanya nini? They are deteriorating, they are bad. What might be the reasons for the same? Or what might be the reason that will make you feel that, or feel what we state in here? Tumesema you are in Kenya, for example, and the amount of income that is received by Kenya bado inaendelea kufanya nini? Increase. That is the per capita income. Are we together? Despite that, the income being increasing, you have also what we call the low living standards. Your living standards in this case, still they are doing what? Deteriorating. What could make you feel that your living standards are deteriorating? Yes? Sorry? Misappropriation of the government funds, no. One of it is unemployment. Sindio? Yeah, yes? Sorry? Huh? The public investment is private investment. No. Are we talking about the people that are living in that entity? That country. Like here in Kenya. Your per capita income here in Kenya, maybe it is increasing. But when you check on the living standards of the people in Kenya, zinafanya nini? Zinaenda chini. They are deteriorating. So what could be the reason that is making those people feel that they are the living standards in this case are deteriorating? Yeah? You may talk of income inequalities. Kuna wenye wanapata pesa mingi na wengine wanapata kidogo. Si ndio? What else? Sorry? over dependent, where in this case the people depend on each what? In each other. What else? Yes? Poverty is also another thing. What else? Yeah? Corruption. Eh? Yeah, the increase in population. Amwandiki. Yes. Yes. So we talked about the unemployment, we've talked about income inequalities, we've talked about the overdependence, poverty. May also talk of what? What else? Eh? May also talk of what? Inflation. Sasa uko hapo na you losing purchasing power. Sindio? You cannot, that is also another thing. There is a price increase, which in this case will now make you lose the purchasing power. What else? Mnacheka. Give us a point, Maureen. Now let's continue. The other one. Now, three methods that are used in to measure the national income of a country. Three methods that are used to measure the national income of a country. Number one, the outputs to what we call the value what? Value added. Sawa. Another one, the income, that is the net income approach. You know, for the net income approach, in this case, hapo unaweza andika method, you know in the formula. No one will nini hata kukosea. Sawa. The method, then you know the formula. But for the value added, that one you have to do what? Explain. Whereby you take the value of all the goods and services, you less the amount that was paid in this case to acquire what? Either those goods and services. That is the value of revenue minus the total cost that is paid for the goods and services rendered. Now, what else? We have the expenditure approach. You know how the expenditure approach you can get the national income? You take what? The consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus exports minus what? The imports. Sawa. And that is how, in that case, you are required to do that. Now, let's get to question number 4C. Question 4C. Question 4C. Question 4C. Question 4C. Following are the consumption and investment function of country Y in billions. You have C and I, and where C is the consumption, Y is income, and I is investment. You are required aggregate spending at equilibrium. Now, when you talk of aggregate demand, will also be equal to the what we call the equilibrium level of income, where we say this is whereby the total of value of goods and services is equal to what? We say the total value of goods and services is equal to what? On equilibrium level of income. Equilibrium income. Well, okay. Let's just do the question. Things are getting too bad. Now, question number 3C. We know incomes should be C plus what? sawa. Depending on what we've been given. Here we said you use the expenditure method. So Y will be equals to consumption, which is 200. 0.8 Y. You add 400. So in that case, this will be 0.2 Y is equals to 600. So Y will be equals to how much? What is 600 divided by 0.2? 3. And that will be the aggregate spending. That will be the aggregate spending. So when we meet on our next class, we'll continue from there. Question 3, question 5, 6, and 7 on that case. So we'll continue from there.